course this evening. And on a personal note, tonight is really special for me. I'm gonna cry. I first encountered the work of Judy Grahn as a teenager in high school, just coming out of the closet, and I should have more eloquent words formulated at this moment, but I just feel like a ball of feelings. And reading the work, the Common Woman poems in particular, was the very first entry point. It made my life feel like it was my own, by the way that the lives of the women that were depicted had this quietness and this loudness at the same time on the page. And it's like a wild time jump to be here right now. And with one of and also with one of my very best friends, Jeanne Vaccaro, to be facilitating the conversation tonight. And Jeanne is a brilliant scholar, curator, amazing person, a dear friend of mine, who is working on all sorts of wonderful projects, including curating a big show coming up in LA next year at you should shout it out over there because I don't. At the ICA LA, like a big art show at the ICA LA next year, which will be very exciting. And so I'm going to pass the mic over to Jeanne to do a more formal introduction to our guest of honor this evening. But thank you so much for being here, both of you. It means so much to me.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. It's really delightful to see such a great crowd. Yeah, come. You're going to be feted. Judy Grahn, everybody. I'm so absolutely honored to get to listen to Judy read tonight and have this conversation. Thank you to Housing Works. I hope people buy books. So I'm going to give a little introduction. Everyone can remember the first time they read Judy Grahn. In the contentious maelstrom between feminist and lesbian feminist self-making, Judy Grahn's poetics refused short-sighted liberation long before the discourse of intersectionality would intervene. Grahn writes inside the mythos of daily living as a way of critiquing the powers and violences that presented themselves as incontestable, inevitable truths. Her interests in mythology and lesbian life have long been part of the same project, building a new form to exist inside, whether poetic or terrestrial. As all of our best writers, Grahn is a poet at heart, even when examining history, writing novels, or chronicling time with friends. She knows that poetry is not just the catch-all, but the do-all form. A mode that begs to be inverted, woman-handled, eroticized, adored, sent into battle. Something capacious enough to hold personal questions and universal truths in delicate tandem. It's hard to give a survey of Grahn's work, a genre-expansive collection of more than a dozen books that include the Common Woman poems, Edward the Dyke and Other Poems, A Woman is Talking to Death, Another Mother Tongue, The Highest Apple, Sappho and the Lesbian Poetic Tradition, Really Reading Gertrude Stein, and Blood, Bread, and Roses, How Menstruation Created the World. Slice of life meditations coexist with literary scholarship, mythic history, and spiritual texts. Her writing is the extension of her lived politics, created in, by, and through work in the gay women's liberation movement. Grahn's books have always been a tireless political record, capturing early images of lesbian becoming and community, while serving too as a voice for those beginning to come into consciousness. It's not unheard of to see a protest sign, past or present, emblazoned with Grahn's words. She has won so many awards, 2 Lambda Literary Awards, 2 American Book Awards, a Stonewall Award, National Endowment for the Arts, a Lifetime Achievement from the Triangle Publishing. And please note, this is not a complete list. They needed to name one after her, the Judy Grahn Award, given out to honor significant works in lesbian nonfiction. We are very privileged listeners tonight as Judy is going to read a work in process, letting us into her journey. How lucky to watch this writer think aloud as she rearranges thoughts, builds the structure, and invites us to get on board. As the work of lesbian liberation spins out into assimilation of stagnancy, Grahn's work, plucked from any era, offers the same fire. A reminder that a political pulse runs through all our work, that the project of lesbian liberation is hard-fought but incomplete, that the answers for how to be, how to challenge the terms, and how to reinvent ourselves can be found in this realm, the next, the past, the future. Anywhere we can learn that there is nothing fixed, nothing guaranteed. Thank you so much, and please help me welcome Judy Grahn.
No, you need a mic.
Okay, now is it a mic? Yes, there we are. It's a mic. Tonight I'm reading new work, so I hope that's not a disappointment. I'm completely engrossed in my third book-length poem. I had two earlier ones that they both became plays, and this one I'm writing very deliberately as a play, and I'll try to set the tone for it. They're based very crudely in the Tarot Queens, which are elements. The Queen of Wands is fire. That was my first one. Queen of Swords is air. And this one is Queen of Cups, the hardest one by far. It's taken me a little over 30 years to write it. Not that I wasn't doing other things. But Queen of Cups is, it's a long, it's eco-poetic drama. And it has a character named Oracle, who is actually half-bird, an osprey. You know what an osprey is, a sea eagle, very beautiful. And he has called a conference because his relatives have become alarmed by reports about the water and what's happening to Earth's waters. So he is calling this a conference of changes, and he invited some elemental goddesses to come with their values to tell us what they have to contribute to what the current problems are, and then the conference will decide what to keep and what's outmoded and we don't need it anymore. So one of them, so there are elemental goddesses, and each of them is accompanied by some earth beings. And plus Mary Magdalene decided to come into this play as well. And I'm like, what? What am I going to do with this? And you'll see what happened with that. So the characters, there's the elemental goddesses, I should say them first. One of them is Ma, the earth, in the form of a great big mound with a robe of flowers and creatures all over it. And one of them is Helena, who is the goddess of love, and I've been tracing her from Sumerian literature, which is now 4,000 years old, and has been returned to us for some reason. Hello, pay attention. And so I won't say all of the characters, only the ones that pop up in the poetry that I'm going to read you today. So I'm not presenting you a piece of the play, I'm presenting you some of my favorite poetry that I've written so far in the play, and we'll see if that works as a reading. One of the earth characters the human characters, is Simon, a magician who turned into a scientist, and Pen, which is short for Penthesilea. She's an Amazon warrior who is in love with the goddess of love. And John the Baptizer is a ghost, and he follows Mary Magdalene around. So those are the ones that will be popping up in the poetry as I read it. I researched not only the Sumerian literature, but some of the stuff at the time of the opening of the Christian era, including the newly found and recovered and translated Gospel of Mary, which blew my mind, and it's in her poetry. But the setting is current times, but these are characters with a lot of memories of history, and some of them knew each other in the past. The mythological themes I'm working with are, religion, economy, philosophy, mythology, and the need to change. So, just to start off, Pen, who of course is the lesbian of the group, and Simon, the scientist, have both become disconnected from Helena, the goddess of love, at the opening here. I want to talk a little also about the poetic voices that I'm using. And that was a big challenge because for a play, I don't want them to all sound the same. They have unique voices. And that means a unique poetic that goes with them. And the most, to me, riveting of these was the voice I chose for Mary Magdalene, that she needed something that could be poignant and emphatic and passionate. And so I chose a form I've never worked with before, the villanelle. Do any of you know about the villanelle? It is a very formal, strict, you've heard lines of it from, do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light, that I think was Dylan Thomas did. But the form has 19 lines. There's only 2 rhymes that you can use. The first and third lines repeat in a very exacting pattern. And so when you hear the villanelle style, you know that's Magdalene talking. So Pen starts us off, and as I say, she's in love with the goddess of love. She says, Helena, your beauty, what is it? Is it as gold as gold? Is it fine as a filament? Can we see it or just know it? Do we sense it or just sink into it? Or does it wrap around us? Is it aesthetic or cosmetic or prosthetic or anesthetic? Is it whatsoever one loves? Is it cosmic, orgasmic? Does love have to be orgasmic? Helena, your beauty, does it shine or does it tremble? Can anyone see it? Does it rumble? Is it a neuron network? Does it drop like a cave and envelop or gradually from inside develop? Helena, your beauty, so radiant, seems to be made of nothing, yet capable of causing so much heart sing, heart throb, heart sick, heartful, heartache, heartburst, heart longing, such great fullness when you are present, such gaunt emptiness when you are missing. Thank you. And Magdalene, at a different point in the play, is addressing Simon, who, as I say, he's disconnected from the goddess of love. And he's asking her advice. And he said, becoming a teacher, what can you teach me? Teach me something. And she says, deep inside your center lives a child. who is the image of the real you. Open-hearted, curious, sweet, and wild. Courageous, dramatic, or so shy. A shadow core within that feels true. Deep inside your center lives a child. The world's full of tragedy and lies, has myriad ways to steal from you. Open-hearted, curious, sweet, and wild. The world wants you passively beguiled until it's you yourself deceives you. Deep inside your center lives a child who wants to be perceived and not hide, who wants to be revealed, to be you, open-hearted, curious, sweet, and wild, who can tell you how to turn the tides that from your very self conceal you, from deep inside your center, where a child is open-hearted, curious, sweet, and wild. There's another character that I forgot to introduce, and it's a cloud of microbes that accompany Ma, the goddess of earth, and they sing. And they have also, there's another character that's not in here tonight, who is making a rocket to go to Mars and get away from the problems of the Earth. And so they sing, they say, "We are the microbes. Ever since the world of life on Earth began, we engage with zealotry its chemistry, and just because we can. We are the microbes, the microbes, the microbes. We inhabit every one of you and all of Ma. Whenever you breathe out, you breathe a unique bunch of us. You mint a fresh breath print. All hail, exhale, inhale, exhale, ha ha ha. We are the microbes. We formulated life on earth to be our house, to be our horse, to be our hound, to be our ground, to be our field, to be our food, to give us something fun to do. We are the microbes, the microbes, the microbes. We are the microbes. We are the microbes, and we're going to Mars. We are the microbes, and we're going to Mars to make a new set of clothes for Ma. The microbes make robes wherever we are. We'll travel on the breath of the astronauts. All hail, exhale, inhale. They'll exhale us. We'll ride the gales to everywhere the minerals are on Mars, on Mars. We are the microbial chefs. We play with mineral recipes. The planet is our kitchen. Assemble new menus, create new appetites in new venues. We are the chemists. The planet is our lab. We metabolize. We are the make robes. Mars is red from iron. We'll make oxygen. We'll make blood. And with the forces of selection, there will be bladders, tentacles, and noses. There will be roses, pansies, and posies. We'll make flowers for Ma, robes and robes of flowers for Ma. We are the microbes, the mighty, mighty microbes. We make robes for Ma, and we're going to Mars. So, Ma is there, in her mound, as a rock, as an actress who has to sit there all day, or actor. And John, the baptizer, is a preacher, and she wants to talk to him. She says, "John, come and visit me." So he goes and stands by her. He says, "You were a preacher, is that it? Tell me what you preach. Tell me." And he says, "If a man has two coats and the man beside him has none, he should give a coat to him so they each have one. No matter what the cost, until the contract is signed and the strike has been won, don't cross the picket line. When 1% of the families own 70% of the wealth, that 99% of the families produced at the cost of their health, their well-being, and their happiness. This is 100% wrong and must be redressed. And Ma says, so admirable how much you care for your own kind. No freedom till we're all free, no child left behind. And if a man has two coats while the man beside him has none, the only thing to do is give him one. You wear your humanism on your sleeve. You are a man of fierce love, John. A man who feels compassion and grief for people who toil and harm. Meanwhile, the ocean is cooking its mollusks and reefs, boiling up increasingly massive storms. This leaves me with a question. What about my coats, John? What would you have me put on? From every cow, you would throw every dog a bone until all the cows are gone and every dog is well. Your people gathered at the riverside to pray and let you dunk them in the river's song. Where will they gather when the river is gone? Your people want so much to save and be saved. What from this loss will they save that they can live on? I don't mean money. I mean my body and bone. As my robe shreds from industrial breast poison, my naked body is beautiful sand and stone. But my robe of flowers is the magical charm that brings life to life and sweet breath to precious lung. You spent years in the desert getting humble, John, sleeping in caves, eating locusts and honeycomb. You know the merciless heat of the killer sun, ring-tailed cat, red fox, black beetle, spider, and loon, each panic of finding the dreadful dried-up pond. Each feels painful swelling of their own poor tongue. You preach about the end of the world, John, all the righteous judgment of souls that's to come. Apocalyptic stories indulge your martyrdom. It's not impossible to slow this spin down, to surrender the swimming pool, give up the lawn, to feel as much outrage for the perishing forms as you do for the worker who is being conned, the people whose wheat supply is stalled or burned. Protect the creatures beyond those you depend upon, because they are your relatives under their skin. Brothers and sisters, all beings are kin, needing right temperature, food, water, oxygen. I need you to leave your humanistic idea that God gave you everything to play with and eat, and that God alone will take action. I am God, and I say you need to change your ways now. I'm the preacher here now, John. I've opened my mouth to swallow you, give you a glimpse of the future you've made. I'm screaming at you. I'm having my say. This is the way of love. The way of love is to be awake and responsible, willing to look at reality, willing to be swayed to sign a contract with me. And John shakes his head no as he walks back toward the group. And he says, and Simon says to him, "What happened there, John? What did she say?" And John says, "That's the angriest woman I've ever seen. In every way she insulted me. She tested my humility. I, who have given up so much, she wants me to surrender everything, even my philosophy. I'm damned if I will. I'm damned if I will. I'm damned if I will." And Oracle says, "He's damned if he won't." So in the process of this conference, this group of diverse characters is trying to figure out where the problems come from, what is the root of what is happening right now, and what needs to be changed, and what seems to be good for change, but actually isn't. In terms of economy, religion, and gender, a lot of the issues that are familiar to us. And so Penn was particularly upset by what's happening with gender variant people and sexual orientation and so on. Librarians being threatened and so on. She sets up a panel and she asks all the other characters and participants to tell her what gender ever meant in their own traditions. So it's an interesting panel. There's 50 pages of it in this play. Forgot to tell you, this is a 10-hour play. And it's already 212 pages, and I just have brought you, my favorite of the poetry so far. But Helena steps in now because she is related to an original goddess of love who is Sumerian from 4,000 years ago, and her love poetry is still available. And she was a goddess also of justice, which is quite wonderful, and of craft. But Helena says of her now, in ancient Sumer, I was called Inanna, Lady Brilliance, as one poet said, most exalted of all the deities, the life force, shimmering, vibrational power, erotic, aesthetic, ferocious at times, deeply in love with the shepherd god, taking good care of the variant gendered people in my temple, who provided healing arts, music, lamentations, prophecy, libation, sacrifice, took part in processions, accompanied me in my quest for justice, aided my protections for integrity of women, and for warriors, and for families, and for business, and the making of crafts. The Sumerians had a logical explanation for sexual variation. Everyone, they said, has an essence, an internal spiritual being or consciousness that guides their lives. Nearly everyone is born male or female, and most stay that way, but some might change and cross over or position themselves in the center or outside or shape-shifting from their own internal sense, or society or the deity, me, might intervene to change their gender to help them, or for less benevolent reasons, as punishment if a man did not honor me, for instance, or a woman not fulfill her expected role. To change their sex, I overturned their heads and changed their clothing and occupation. Every category of person, it seems, had a name, a place, a job, and a spiritual essence. And there were 8 genders. So Oracle then asks Magdalene, whose gospel was written 2,000 years later than that one that I just told you about. Magdalene, what about your own gospel? What does it say about gender? And Magdalene says, Peter, in the Gospel of Thomas, said females don't deserve life, and I should be made to leave their company when I was paying their way. He then claimed that our teacher said he would turn me into a man in order that I could become a living spirit and be eligible to enter the kingdom of heaven. What a bizarre idea. No women should even apply for eternal life. But as I wrote in my Gospel of Mary, I was the first to see my teacher again after death. And when I asked him directly, our teacher said, there is no gender on the other side. And Ben says, well, that's a radical thought. And Magdalene says, no gender over on the other side, no hierarchic standing, no orientation, no need for pride. Sex imperatives set aside, no pink or blue glad handing, no gender over on the other side. Eliminates the need to lie or reproductive slandering, no orientation, no need for pride. Perceive with democratic eyes, infinitely expanding, no gender over on the other side. Imagine feeling free to fly, any direction landing, no orientation, no need for pride. Unbounded in the timeless time, a selfless self-commanding, no gender over on the other side, no orientation, no need for pride. Doing okay there? So Jen, at the end of her panel, which as I said, really did go on, and was full of games and a procession and stuff, I'm beginning to understand deciding who deserves to live and live freely in the name of religion is wrong. Religion has deep psychological value for each group in each era of our evolution. Forced conversion interferes with our learning and our yearning to be better. Surely every human has a right to practices that include them, that don't malign or blame or exclude them. This, of course, refers to women, and if we are allowed to exist at all, multi-gendered people with a broken tradition, living within oppressive religious judgment, have had to define ourselves only by our sexuality because our spiritual foundation, our histories, are forgotten or forbidden or so violently suppressed that our own people, even our own parents, may turn against us. An oracle says you need to establish gender redefinitions, appropriate divinities for what is spiritual, and teachers who can reconfigure sacred links, initiations, and rituals. And Penn says, Oracle, this panel has added greatly to my understanding that connections to spirit are crucial, as everyone deserves to be part of an origin story, with ways to participate in sacred community and be in touch with something greater than ourselves, something grander and smarter. I long for this more than anything else, and I don't want to be a martyr. And Magdalene says, why do you say this about martyrdom? What do you mean? And Penn says, in my many lives as a soldier, I experienced how martyrdom drives the wars, how people become enraged when their suffering is not acknowledged, and engage in a competition of historic misery, not to solve anything, it's all attrition, morbid emotional expression of whose hurts warrant the most compassion. There's no lesson, there's no ending. I just want some answers. I just want to find and occupy my own position. And Magdalene responds, when those you love are murdered by the state, whether by war's invasion or a rabid pack, you can lose trust in authority, lose faith that justice prevails. But you can't just wait. You must not let go of life. Can't go slack when those you love are murdered by the state. Whether directly or by the spread of hate, whether from police corruption or pious claptrap, you can lose trust in authority, lose faith. Loss of faith only adds to loss's weight, to press you down and curl you in your lap when those you love are murdered by the state. Try to put shoulders back, stand up straight, gather the friends who will help you fight back. You can lose trust in authority, lose faith in leaders, but not in your own good faith or confidence in your own authority to act. when those you love are murdered by the state, and you can lose trust in authority, lose faith. So in the course of this very long play, Penn becomes reconnected with the goddess of love and says this about it: engulfed in her love, I have no more fears, no regrets that cannot be resolved. Engulfed in her love, I have gotten so clear, it's as though I could walk through walls. Engulfed in her love, I've released bitter tears, whatever cannot be consoled. Engulfed in her love, I'm in rarefied air. I feel like I'm dancing with elves. Engulfed in her love, with enough yet to spare, when again I'm alone with myself. And Magdalene follows that by saying, take your love into the difficult world. Take it without need of a shield. Open yourself, a tender leaf unfurled. Open your clenched heart, uncurl your metal heart, heat it, and then unyielded. Take your love into the difficult world. Let go the pattern, knitted, purled, zipped up, closed off, steeled. Open yourself, a tender leaf unfurled, believing in trees, sapling or gnarled, with buds to replenish the hungry field. Take your love into the difficult world, the difficult, angry, wounded pearl. Imagine planting love, the yield. Open yourself, a tender leaf unfurled. What might to life be stirred? What could be staunched, healed? Take your love into the difficult world. Open yourself, a tender leaf unfurled. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Queen of Cups.
Is this one work? Yeah, it's okay? Thank you, that was incredible.
Thank you.
Round of applause for Judy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's very heartening. I'll go back and finish the rest of it now. I hope I can measure up, because I really do love working on these poems. I thought villanelles were way over my head, you know? And that I'd run out of steam after 1.5. And Magdalene has 11 of them in this play.
I had all these questions planned out, but in listening, I was so struck in the end with this idea of taking your love into a difficult world. I think that so many of us are feeling immense grief and just so wounded and hopeless, really, in a lot of ways. And this idea of what it sort of takes to stay with these times is something that you're really working through here,
Yeah.
And the other thing that I think is really happening is that you're working with an origin story, right? And we all have these origin stories that kind of naturalize what we think, what we've been told, and what we've been taught. And in this project, which began, several decades ago, and with, the Queen of Wands and then the Queen of Swords, and here we are, and you're in this play. I'm just wondering how you kind of continue to think about love and difficulty and stick with this process of hope.
Well, part of it is I don't have an answer. I don't know. I know that what the poetry gives me is like what the art gives me is the hope, and that I'm lucky enough to have enough space to really write poetry. And I've been doing it for such a very long time. And my earliest work that some of you know so well, the Common Woman poems and The Woman is Talking to Death and the She Who poems, those all end with promises of fidelity, don't they? Every single one of them does that. If you've ever, it just occurred to me the other day, every ending is the same in a certain way. It's a promise that's made to some group of people to be loyal to them and to do everything, to devote my life to it. And I've fulfilled that promise in my life. And so now, this is the poetry that I've always, I wrote that poetry in community and activism. And now, this stuff is like, for me, what I've always wanted to write was something lyrical that had a lot of emphasis on beauty. And it's just coming in. But it's in the work that I'm doing, in the research. Inanna is a very powerful goddess with really great stories. In my prose book, Eruptions of Inanna, there's 8 of her stories are in there, and they're all really interesting. But she's a goddess of love, and she descended to us through Astarte and Ishtar, and all the goddesses of love have similar qualities. Aphrodite, Sappho's goddess, to have that as a model. And I'm looking always for where it is in our capitalist, society, because I think she's also goddess of the economy, and that's what they're wanting to examine in the play. Is how does that play? What do you do with that? Because she's goddess of desire, and she's sexual. She's erotic. So. Working with that material, believe me, if you've ever worked with somebody else's poetry, it's full of love. Almost always, poets operate out of love, and the love transfers over to you in the process of, that's why I was just a fool for the older poets, because I fell so deeply in love with them. Not just awe, but wanted to, I don't know what, crawl inside of them or something, anything, because the poetry had fed me, so thoroughly. So I have to say that's what does it. If you've got an art and a garden, and creatures around you, that's always going to be a source of optimism and love, because they go through all manner of things. The squirrels get run over and fall out of the tree, and the plants wither, but they keep on going. So why can't we? Are we so different? And that's Ma keeps saying that. Are we so different from my other creatures? And she's saying, take a look at them. They're democratic. At times they're very kind. At times they cross differences. Why can't you do that?
Well, with mysticism and these kind of sort of non-material forces of spirituality and faith that are so grounded in this history, I'm really thinking about how across your writing, for all of these decades, there is this kind of faith driving our relationship to history and how we build a new world through belief. That we have to have a kind of non-material belief, even as we're grounded in this moment in time. And in all of the, intense violences that we're contending with, that there is still this kind of non-material force, a kind of energy or spirituality and a mysticism that's animating the work, that's kind of driving you to create this whole new context, this whole environment. So I was wondering if you could talk to us about the conference, because coming from, the history of women's liberation and gay liberation and thinking about communes and communal thinking and collective organizing, that the conference, people getting together on a panel and all of these people talking for 50 pages about the different kinds of gender and who you can be, and this idea of having to stick with talking with one another, which is something we're not all so great at these days, you know, having a belief in conversation and in dialogue, you can talk about the importance of this idea of a conference or the communal thinking, you know.
I'm hoping that this can be that kind of play, you know, that it's a conference is kind of funny. It's sort of a joke, isn't it? And that their poems are like papers that they're presenting, you know, on a particular, their position papers of one kind after another, after another, after another, on these various topics. And so they are in community, but I'm hoping that the play can also play with community, that it can be, if it's 10 hours long, that there's somebody who knows how to put on long works and has a venue and invites people to come and bring their lunch, or maybe there's a snack bar nearby or whatever. And that communities can turn out with their literature if they've got it, you know, or their spiel in the intermissions about, you want to join our group because we're keeping the pipeline from coming through the, you know, the Midwest, and, you know, we're getting the salmon back in the river, because there are all kinds of people doing all kinds of things, but that we don't know about because it doesn't hit the news. So anyway, I'm just hoping that this can be a community kind of drama and a draw, and have points of discussion that teachers could use it, and I don't know.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about the structure. So you have this 10-hour play, and you want to invite people to kind of come and have it be a community resource to, from what I've read of it, that it models community, but it also creates community by inviting people into.
That's my hope, yeah, that it's that kind of a form, a cellular form. It could happen. That would be nice, but it's not up to me. It's only up to me to just have that vision, and as I'm writing it, make it as interesting as possible. By the way, there's a character who's a dog, and he's very grounded in present time, which is neat. He interrupts everything just exactly the way dogs do. I want to go now, he says. It's not your turn. I don't care, I want to go now. Anyway, I came out into a world with no community, and that just seemed so steadfast against me and was hypocritical about it. It's the McCarthy era, those of you old enough to remember what that meant. Joseph McCarthy just went on a rampage, and there's always some group name that's an excuse. In his case, it was that everybody was a communist, and how gay people ended up all being communists, I don't know, but we did, because you know, got to lump them in some nasty category and go after them. So was that part of what seems to be the cycles that happen in society. And this was, I came out in the down, closed off period. And then it started opening up again, and I participated in its opening up. And then it was all about community. The hippies were all about community. A lot of the African American activist organizations, people don't know necessarily, I was always surprised by it, but they had communes and community services, feed the children, educate people, and so on. So a model that went before in the women's movement, I think that the gay women's liberation helped to get the women in the women's movement out into the public by establishing public spaces right away, which is what we did, and services that were helpful to women. And community, it was all about community for those 2 decades, or a decade and a half. And then I got involved in other kinds of collaborations. But it shows in my work that I'm a community. I snatch from everybody. You know, if you say something to me, it could end up in one of my poems. You don't know. I once had 3 friends say, "You quoted me right there in that poem." I probably did, you know.
Well, what I love about this idea of the play as a kind of form of education is that, you know, it's kind of thinking outside of formal institutions, because so many people feel, you know, people are in debt, you know, to get into school. There was a time when, you know, tuition was free, and just to create spaces where people can be thinking and learning that are modeled outside of a formal space of university, or thinking about horizontal pedagogy or a democratic kind of classroom that doesn't have to be in a formal space. And I think that we are kind of hungry for those models right now in particular. And so much free speech is being, you know, censured, and this, you know, harking back to the days of McCarthyism and what's happening up at Columbia University as we speak, and the students are being arrested for speaking out for Palestine. So we're in this real moment of compression, and I think tension, and people sort of wanting, there's just so much tension, and people want movement and want change. And when we first spoke, I was telling Judy, I was like, I feel just so, you know, despondent and overwhelmed and just brokenhearted over the world we live in. And, you know, you talked to me about, you know, earlier moments of the 1960s and all the kind of tension in the air, and that tension led to movement, and that movement can change, you know. And I've sort of thought about that ever since we had that first conversation, because just moving through the world every day is so incredibly painful and challenging. And at times I feel so kind of stuck, you know, hopeless. And I know many people have that feeling of wanting movement and wanting change, you know, and are looking for models for it.
Yeah. Well, that's right. And it's very challenging, and I think that it's always been challenging. You know, I'm sort of glib about how we did what we did, but it meant that being, let's say, 30 years old, we started living like very, very poor students. And it's true, rents were cheap, so we could each have our own room in these households. That was our ideal. But there wasn't money for food or clothing, so people would bring you some boots. Maybe they fit, maybe they didn't, but you wore them anyway. It's not that it was easy. It required coming down off of some idea about monetary success in life. And that, of course, fits with art so very well, doesn't it? Especially poetry. It's just impossible to sell your poem for $100,000. I mean, you know, who has even ever tried to do the auction? Hello, here we are. Here's a copy of the poem. You know, or you could make candy bars, and people have to pay for them every time they eat one, but they don't have to pay for the poem every time they read the poem, right? And they might get the same amount of sweetness and nourishment out of the poem as they get out of the candy bar, but it doesn't make any difference. It doesn't work that way. And so that's actually not bad news. It's actually good news, because it makes poets somewhat trustworthy, somewhat more honest, maybe, so some more grounded and in touch with people who are forced to not have much of anything, and so to be speaking in behalf of other people. And that's a good thing. It's almost a call, it's a calling, certainly it's a calling. And it helps create community, because it's only in community that you can find the vitality that you need to get through your life. No matter what that life is, you can be very wealthy and cut off from the goddess of love, and you are in trouble, you know. So there's that. And there's also the joy of having a life that you know is meaningful, that you really know that it's meaningful. There's just something encouraging about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so nourishing to think about creating spaces for people to speak the truth and also to connect with one another. We really need that so much now.
I think so, yeah.
I know that there's a lot of diehard fans out there, so I don't want to hog up the questions, but I want to open it up and see if there are folks who have comments and questions about the new work that you're doing and about your practice. Don't be shy. You can raise your hand and I'll come with you. Like, oh, I'll just
I want to know whether you worked with a tarot deck in your creative process. Or do you practice these cards as a part of your
So the question is, if you use a tarot deck in your writing practice, if you pull cards or if you're writing with a deck? Great question.
Yeah, my life partner, spouse, or Spice, I call her.
That means spice.
Spice.
That's cute.
Yeah. She does really, really good tarot readings. So I go to that, to her for that. But I have used a pendulum for a long, long time, and ever since 1982, 1982, not 1982, but 1980 until last year, we had a particular spirit who was called to my attention, and I learned to use the pendulum, and I started engaging with her, and I'd seen her in visions, and I was like, what is this? I don't know, but I can't tell anyone about it. And then I discovered my parents, who wouldn't tell me anything like this. My father came from a particular part of Scandinavia where they inherit spirits. Oh, I said, did he have a spirit? Oh yes, oh yes, said my mother. You know, after 45 years, okay, I got it.
It's the spirit.
Anyway, they're called field healing.
Let's see.
Now, all right. Anyway, that was the kind of divination that I did. I think that's the main one. And every once in a while, drawing a card, or having somebody do numerology, or people in California are fortunate to just be heirs to all kinds of divinatory systems from all over the world, especially from Asia. And so, there's that. But this one is Scandinavian. And, so my mother said, yes, he has a spirit, and we talk to the spirit, and the spirit gives him advice. He sits on Elmer's chest and gives him advice, and we talk. And not always good advice either, she said. And I thought that was pretty funny, but she was a very funny lady. Anyway, my parents kept it from me because they were afraid that they would be ostracized, or that she'd be hauled off to the mental hospital or whatever. And so it was up to me, and this came to me entirely on my own, without knowing anything that I can know about what they were up to. So anyway, that's a form of divination, and one that has worked for me really, really well, especially my work. Just like right there with what to say about the work, what you're going to do next, what the work is going to, right there. Okay. And then every once in a while, a great big lie of some kind or another. Like, where are my keys? Oh, under the bed, There is no under the bed, you know. So, Elizabeth, that answered your question? Okay.
It seems like your work is in my spirit microphone. I don't know what this is.
Yeah, the spirit came into the microphone. Other questions?
Hi.
Hi.
First a comment, then a question. The comment is, I spent a long time in prison and I spent 2 years in solitary, and I read about Malcolm and it just kept me being able to sort of feel firmly who I was and sustain an identity and a culture, a sense of connection with that community. And the question is, you told us that the form that you used for Magdalene was the villanelle, and I can really hear it, and it's so beautiful. I mean, it's incredibly beautiful. And I wondered what this is sort of a nerdy question, but what the other forms were for the other characters.
Well, there's one character who is a tornado. She's air, but she manifests as a tornado or whirlpool or firestorm. And she speaks in very tersely, using science language, 2 to 3 syllables per line. And that's really interesting. Ma, you heard her voice. There's sort of quatrains, or some of them are 6 lines, and they rhyme at the end, but it's not regular necessarily. It's in there. Sometimes there's internal rhymes, but long lines and very emphatic and dense. So kind of an earthy, grounded, and very very emphatic. In this piece anyway. There are other pieces where she's more tender. And Simon, he doesn't rhyme very often. I wanted to give him, he elucidates, and he uses, like some people do, what I'm doing right now, in fact, I'm holding space, but not saying words. So he holds space by, ridiculous, he'll say, And you know people who are like that. They hold the space, or they hold the space with spaces. And so he has that kind of picture. I wanted to make it interesting and pertinent to him.
I also love the molecules. The molecules.
Oh, the microbes?
Microbes. I'm so bad at science. I mean, just the M word.
Yeah.
Microbes.
Oh, the microbes. Well, they're very enthusiastic and repetitive, and hopefully somebody will musicalize them in some way. That's interesting.
It's a fun chorus.
It is.
Microbes.
And they talk about themselves. That's what they talk about, what they do.
Hi. Sorry. So do you feel like these characters and deities, do you feel like they're like kind of being channeled through you, or do you feel like they're kind of expressing a point of view that you're trying to play out?
I think it's both things. As I said earlier, I could not imagine how in the world I was going to write anything about Mary Magdalene, about whom I knew very little. I had read books and gone to a terrible opera of her, and I did some research. I researched everything. A science friend for the tornado, and ecological stuff for Ma, Sumerian stuff for Helena, and Magdalene's gospel is just really remarkable. And it's not that I understood it when I read it. I was like, what? Because it's a very archaic manner of telling stories, fables almost, and instructions that are in these old documents. But a scholar named Karen L. King has written a really excellent book on Mary Magdalene, And she just transliterated, she really did explain a lot of things about what she thought the gospel was saying. And so I took it and ran with it, and from what other things that I could determine about Magdalene as a possible historic figure. And that was just mind-blowing how, and her gospel is what has led me. So there's villanelles, more than half of them, it's not my wisdom that's in there. It's coming right out of the Gospel of Mary. Whoever wrote that, maybe 200 AD, maybe 100 AD, maybe it was written by a woman, maybe not, but it's the missing voice of womanhood that's in there, and it's very, very interesting. And I think it's valuable. So it's in the play as a point of, okay, here's some moral authority that's been left out and is very different, and it's really, I just am finding it really useful to think about as well as to write about. So they wrote themselves. I was amazed. Wake up in the middle of the night, oh, there's a line running through my head, and I'm like, wait a minute, that sounds like Mary Magdalene. Oh my God, I write the line down, the second line comes in, I'm like, okay, that's the third line, they rhyme, I got these rhymes, and I say, are there enough words in my vocabulary that this rhyme is going to sustain 6 more times, through the poem? And if not, then I need another end line like that. But the point of it is right out of her gospel. And me thinking, how can I get this in here? Because it just seems so important to write about. So no gender is one, but there are others that are equally interesting and emphatic. They're in the villanelles. So that's like what art does for us, and why I really recommend art as well as gardening and animals. Is that, it leads us to something bigger than ourselves. It takes us out of the commercial commodification of feelings and values and everything that's been so commodified. So you try to read, and it's just trying to excite your senses, so you will read this meaningless story about someone you don't know and don't need to know anything about, maybe, or maybe you do, but it's not telling you what you really need to know. And the art will take you into this other place that really will feed you. It doesn't make an addict out of you, although this play is an addiction. Let me just tell you, I need help. I can't get out of it. It's already 212 pages. Who's going to stop me? What's going to happen now? And I'm saying it's good for me, But it is lots and lots of fun to work on it, and finally I'm so gratified. And it's not only fun, I have to say, difficult poetry makes me sick. And sometimes I'm in bed for days over something really hard to write, because something from my childhood that I never could deal with because it happened when I was too little, or I don't know, for some other reason, I don't remember what it was, or I'm just get sick and I don't even know why. When I'm working on certain difficult works, or they're scary to write, not to put them out in the public, and oh my God, everybody's going to chop my head off, and stuff like that. But that's part of being an artist, and you just go through that. At least it's real. It's not that I'm, doom scrolling on my phone all day long, which I also do. Don't do that.
Any other questions?
I so appreciate, what I could sense was some enthusiasm over the poems, various of the poems would strike certain certain of you as, yes. And, you know, I've been trying so hard to make this beautiful and meaningful at the same time, and to have some value in it that we can go to that's affirming in the way that you're talking about another mother tongue. You know, I write in part to save my own life and to save the lives of the people around me who were dying in droves as I was coming out, you know, long before AIDS, let alone, you know, the plagues and the cancer and all that. They were dying of despair and alcoholism and brutality and police oppression and stuff like that. And so I just always have felt like I'm in a race to try to keep myself afloat, not in a nice pond, you know, in a nice place, and help out other people that I love. So when you tell me this, it's so affirming that I will treasure that as a piece of fruit that I take home and can eat for many, many days to sustain me to keep doing this like that. It's like that. And it's like, and it's poetry. It's just like, oh, only poets, you know, only poets. Well, guess what? The Sumerians, you know, fed their stuff right on into the biblical texts and the Torah and all kinds of other places, all along the way, to say nothing of all kinds of Middle Eastern religions that I don't even know about, who were influenced by that great people, and the Egyptian people with their literacy as well. But the Sumerians, it's just, you can just see it, it's right there. And it's right here, because they created what we call civilization. Commerce, and that meant cities. And there they were, and they did that, and Inanna was a part of that, and that story is in my play. It's a Sumerian myth about the origin of commerce, and she's right there in the middle of it. So, I mean, how can you not get excited about this stuff? You know, this makes research so rich and so engrossing, and then it turns into art, and it's just like, it's good. And it's a good way to live. Yeah.
Please, go ahead. Were you in the Stonewall riot?
Were you in the Stonewall
Was
riot?
I in the Stonewall riot? I was actually, thank you for that question. I was all the way on the other side of the country, but I heard about the Stonewall riot, and not long after that, we started organizing, and we went a very long distance with the communities that we organized, and lived in households after that.
It's a great question.
Yeah.
Well, I know that Judy's going to be.
Just one, oh, I'm sorry. Just one other thing I just wanted to say about this stuff that you were asking is that while it's like taking on such really serious issues, it's also funny. I mean, there's a lot of humor in it, and I think that that's so important in how we sustain ourselves.
Yes.
Thank you.
I thank you. You're so welcome. I really do think that it's so easy to take ourselves so seriously, and of course I do that in the notes that are in there, and I would say, well, I have Ma yelling all this stuff, you know, and when I read it out loud, I'm like, ooh, so I cut that, or my friend says, ooh, like that. That's just too much. She's just yelling at us, you know, and that's me feeling like I have a vehicle for saying what I really and then I just have to be hauled back to say, but what really, if the earth had, you know, which of us would she like best? You know what I mean? It's like, who would she love? You know, who would she love? about, and what would she love about us, and how can I be something that Earth really appreciates that, and how would I know that? Of course, my pendulum will tell me. Maybe.
Well, you're giving us a lot to, think about, because now I'm gonna go home and wonder which of the 8 genders I wanna be. So there's all, you're not yelling at us, you're giving us all of these little ideas to play with.
Passing them on from the research that I do, and I just was lucky to fall in along his lines, to need this and therefore be drawn to it, and then to find, oh, it's there. I thought it wasn't there. I thought nothing was there, and there it is, and it just gets, to me, it's like I just want to knit things together in some kind of way. That's what I try to do. So.
Well, let's all give Judy a giant round of applause. We're going to hang out here and chat with people and sign books.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. This has been absolutely incredible. We've got so much energy in the room, and I think joy and
Oh, good.
hope.
Well, Jeanne, you're just a wonderful interviewer, and I knew that from our first Zoom session together, that, you're so enthusiastic and thoughtful and so on, all of it.
Well, it's just really a huge pleasure to get to listen to you and to continue to learn from you. So thank you so much, Judy.
You're welcome.